So there's three commands that Jesus gives us in here. The first one is do not worry about your life. Literally the very first words. And in case you're new here, I wanted to tell you I have a background in elementary education, and then mindset coaching. And somewhere along the lines, I think it was in the mindset, my deep dive into like the beauty of the brain and that before I started journeying so closely with God. I heard a saying that what you worry about is what you're worshiping. And I was like, whoa, it stopped me dead in my tracks. And so I kind of paired those two words together and I've piggybacked them together. So if I find myself worrying about something, I realize I'm actually worshiping that. And so it helps me to catch it a little bit quicker. So that's why I'm sharing it here in case that will help you. If you catch yourself worrying and maybe that statement will sting you a little bit, just enough to help you correct your thoughts a little quicker, because it helped me. And so Jesus says, do not worry about your life. The next command he says is at the beginning of verse 28. I'm sorry, 26. My eyeball is too far away. Look at the birds of the air. So we have to be paying attention to be able to see, right? We can't be like wherever our attention goes is what we're going to notice. Let me say it that way. And Cheryl has been sharing in the group and on all of our social media platforms like clouds lately, which is so cool because guess what it got me doing? Looking up. And that's why I saw the sparrows. And actually, this other story that I wanted to share too just came back to my mind. Mackenzie and I were driving last week. It was like half week for them, or conference week. That's what it's called. And we were driving quickly to Costco before the other two got out because the elementary school was the only one who had a half day that day and also had a parent teacher conference. And we have to drive through like a valley, and we live on a mountainous island. I know that makes no sense, but it's an island that has a mountain on it. And then there's mountains, all the Cascade Mountains are on the other side that we can see as we're driving to Costco. And Mackenzie and I were talking about the birds, and she was asking me what they think because they were sitting on the power lines. And then I said, I don't know if they can think. And she said, I said, because God didn't give them the contemplative brain like he gave us, because we're like the part of his creation that he made special. And she said, well, there's one bird that, I don't know what she said. There's one bird that can or does. And I was like, what's that? And she said, a dove. And I said, well, he did use a dove. I said, but I don't know that the dove can think any better or not than the rest of the birds. And I kid you not, right after she says that, these birds, because where we are, we see tons of geese that migrate and tons of birds that migrate, which is crazy because we're not even that far south. We're pretty far north in Washington. And all of a sudden, this big flock of what seemed to be smaller birds like sparrows is like up in the sky, and they're forming like with their pattern that they're flying in. There was an open shape of a dove. And that's crazy part number one. Crazy part number two is that she and I both saw it. I was like, do you see that? She's like, do you see that? And we both saw the dove. So we have to be looking in order to see. So where your focus goes is very important. Okay. And then the third command that he's pointing out is how valuable we are. He says, are you not much more valuable than they are? So that's the end of 26. And a lot of times we find ourselves worrying because we don't know our own value. And as we journey closer and closer with God and we renew our mind in Him and in the Word every single day, and through whatever form it is, maybe it's worship songs, maybe it's your friends, maybe it's the Bible, maybe it's all of it on repeat, like me lately. That is how we can gain confidence. And I wanted to share this from Jesus Calling from yesterday. I read it at night, but I had so much running around yesterday with the kiddos that I didn't get to it because I wanted to focus on making sure I got my notes together for this Bible study. But you can't make this up. This is God, okay? I've had this thing since 2013, okay? It says, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but in the part that I highlighted, it says, this morning, while I was listening to the music, the worship music before we got started here, do not be anxious about the weakness of your body. Instead, view it as the prelude to my infusing energy into your being. And then I'm going to read this last little paragraph after that. As you identify more and more fully with me, my life becomes increasingly intertwined with yours. Through the process of aging, though the process of aging continues, inwardly you grow stronger with the passing years. Those who live close to me develop an inner aliveness that makes them seem youthful in spite of their years. Let my life shine through you as you walk in the light with me. So, how amazing that it's like, don't worry about how weak you are, because and we know that there's scripture. I believe we actually even read that last week. Feels like last year. That our weakness, it like glorifies His strength. So remember that. And so in this little part, Jesus is not minimizing our needs, but He's reordering our focus. And He says, stop carrying what was never yours to begin with. So the teaching points that we're going to cover, the first one is the struggle isn't yours to fix.